Welcome to the Seriously It's Not Therapy podcast, where every week we take turns to ask each other some really interesting, deep, purposeful questions. The thing is, Brenda doesn't know what I'm going to ask her today because that's how we like to roll. Hey, Brenda, how are you?
Yeah, I'm sure it's like how you like to roll. I'll be fine.
Totally.
I'll be fine.
Totally. What we're going to talk about today, because I've been having lots of really interesting conversations with clients recently about their purpose. And the reason I think this is really topical is when I'm giving somebody a reading, and there's lots of different aspects in their chart that point towards the kind of work that they're either talented in, they should be doing, or they're really drawn to. And there's very specific destiny points in charts. I guess the frustration for people sometimes is they would love me to say, oh, you should be, and it's a very specific job. But that's not how astrology works. It's not how purpose always works. Sometimes it can be really clear, and I might say to someone, have you thought about studying law? Because it's really clear in their chart. And they'll be like, yes. It's not always clear like that. And so I thought we'd have a really interesting discussion around purpose, and knowing that you've coached, literally millions of clients over the years, I'm sure that's something that comes up and it's quite topical. So I'd love to hear, firstly, what you think about purpose and in your coaching experience, the attitudes that tend to come up when you talk about purpose.
Oh, interesting. And you know what? Something comes to mind really quickly because purpose is a big topic.
Mm,
And I've had my own journey on trying to find my own purpose. And I remember, gosh, I maybe 10 years ago, a business coach said to me, what if you don't have this massive, big, overarching purpose? What if, and it started this conversation.
interesting.
And
Mm,
I really remember in that moment feeling like the pressure was off. It really
mm,
felt like the pressure was off me to have this big thing. So I'm not convinced that we all have or that it has to be big. Sometimes it's just, and I'm older now, so it's, for me, it's being true to my values is a big
mm,
thing for me now, and it changes over time. And the other thing is actually, if I think to my career coaching, which
mm,
was where I kind of started my journey with coaching, there'd be a lot of people who would connect with what they thought was a purpose, but then they would doubt that they could manage it or get there,
yes,
and suddenly there's
yes,
these confidence issues and this self-doubt coming through. So I have
yes.
really mixed views on needing to be
Mm.
able to identify with a purpose. Hmm.
That's really interesting because from a neuroscience perspective, like we need certainty. And this is what I see a lot in readings, people wanting certainty. They want to be told specifically sometimes, this is what you should be doing, or this, this is the kind of job you should be doing. And when you can't give them that, you can see sometimes there's panic that sets in. So from a
Hmm.
neuroscience perspective, knowing that we need that sense of certainty and understanding our purpose, or thinking we understand our purpose, can give us that certainty. How does that play out with the clients that you've coached when they feel like they have certainty or they don't have certainty around their purpose?
Yeah, look, that is when we step in and do a whole lot of work around confidence and
Mm,
self-belief. And
mm,
it's really funny that you asked that because quite early on when I set up my coaching business, I was really surprised at the, 85%, I remember measuring it, of people would have this self-esteem issue, the confidence issues. And that's
mm.
why I went on to write a book because it's like, oh, I need to reach more people. This is a serious thing. So they'd beat themselves up if they struggled to figure it out.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
just, it's like I don't want to sound all negative because, there's been some great literature. Simon Sinek is one who writes
Yes.
about knowing your why, and there's absolutely brilliant reasons to. And if you connect with it, and I've heard from people who it really pulls them forward and they achieve great things in life because of that. I guess I'm just letting people off the hook who don't feel that way, don't connect with a big purpose. But yeah, neuroscientifically, it does help us feel more aligned and
Mm.
feel, consistent, I guess, serotonin, dopamine, all those lovely chemicals that we aim for. But if I stay with neuroscience and I think about connection, the oxytocin, the
Yeah. Yeah.
family is a massive value of mine. And I know value is different to purpose, but that is what pulls me forward. In fact, I've just made a career choice, and the big difference between two choices I had to make was one was asking about my family, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
a nanny bee, I'm a grandparent. So it's
Yeah.
really important to me, that connection, and oxytocin is the chemical of connection.
Mm-hmm.
That is what drives me now, being a bit
Mm.
older. And so there's lots of variations, there's lots of nuances to what a purpose can be.
Okay, that's really interesting. And there's two things in that with what you just said. And the first thing I want to talk about is, do you think that you are a bit flexible with thinking about purpose now, because purpose can change over time? And
Yeah.
some people feel, initially early on, particularly when they're younger, that they have to have that strong sense of purpose. This is what I'm doing. But the brain is wired for curiosity. The brain is wired for multiple inputs, but also for growth as well. So that
Yeah.
purpose can change over time. So do you think that, part of your attitude is around that?
Oh, look, it's really interesting for me because I remember, and because I wrote about this, so it's why it's always clear in my mind. I remember as a youngster walking around with my little toy pushchair and a doll in the pushchair. And I remember as I got older, I just wanted to be a mum. That was my thing.
Mm,
I wanted to be
mm,
a mum. What do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a mummy. And,
mm,
it's really funny that fast forward all this time and it's still about family.
mm. It
Yes,
is.
it does change over time. It does change.
Yes. Yes. So I would argue you on this
Mm,
point, healthy argue, is if we bring astrology into it, and if we bring in that North Node destiny point, because the North Node destiny point pushes us towards, this is our purpose, this is our destiny, this is what we need to be working on. And it's not
mm,
always easy. Some people naturally align to it. Other people, it can be really tough to push themselves in that direction, because the South Node, it's the skills, the talents that we're born with, and it feels comfortable. And so it's really easy to stay in that South Node energy, because it does feel really, really healthy and normal. But the thing is, we need to use those skills from the South
mm,
Node and take them on our North Node journey. And when we understand those energies and we understand how to work with them, it makes it so much easier to help us align with our purpose. But even with that in mind, our soul grows, so that purpose can adjust and change over time. But I looked up your North Node before we connected. And interestingly, your North Node is in Aries and expressed through the seventh house, which is Libra energy, which means that your South Node is in Libra and expressed through the first. So interestingly, when your North Node is in Aries, this is about you being the leader and stepping into leadership roles. It's about going after what you want and doing what you want. And that Aries energy is really, really inspiring, really inspiring.
mm.
And it can be quite entrepreneurial, which you have been, like you've had your own businesses. So it's pushing you towards that, but expressed through the seventh house. Seventh house is relationships. So there's two things in this. It's about working with people. So your business
Yeah.
has been around working with people, and your career has been around working with people and coaching people, which is, Aries is the ultimate coach, right? Working with people. But the seventh house is also about family and about balance.
Can I
So,
jump in?
yeah.
because there's a really interesting another layer to me, we've all got,
Mm,
is numerology. And if I look at my look, I can't remember whether it's my personal number or my life path number, but I am a compassionate humanitarian. And I was speaking to a numerologist not so long ago, so it's fresh in my mind. But
mm,
also in business, I've always set up some form of community, like whether
mhm.
it be group coaching work or some sort of community in that coaching arena. So it's really interesting what you're saying. I love this stuff.
Really interesting. But that comes back to your point where you were saying, not sure if I'm attached to a purpose. I let people off the hook because now I'm about family. But when you were younger, you were pushing that pram and family was really important. So what that says to
Yeah.
me is actually from a young age, you've been aligned with that North Node direction and you've made sure that, yes, you've pursued your goals in your career, but you've also made time for family as well.
Mm,
And family is
yeah.
one of those elements of the seventh house. So
Mm.
I find that really, really fascinating. Really fascinating.
I also feel a bit lucky, Tanya. I feel like
Yes.
I've been able to
Mm.
follow naturally where I want to be. It's
Yeah.
like, or where it feels nice for
Yeah.
me.
But
So,
I feel that you've just been aligned from a young age, which from a lot of people, they're not aligned from a young
mm,
age. And
yeah.
if we're going to update our purpose over time and being aware that we're updating our purpose over time, that's rewiring our brain. And so, from a neuroplasticity perspective and knowing the work that you do, what does that look like? Have you had clients where they have updated their purpose and their perspective? What does it look like?
I think as you speak, what keeps coming into my mind is values. And I think they're very closely aligned, right?
Mm,
Values, what are our values? What is our purpose? And I think a lot of the work I did with people at the outset, because it's all about self-awareness, was understanding their own set of values. And it's wonderful to take someone through a process and get that clarity and take them
mm,
on that journey, because then they can check in on a regular basis whether they are being true to their values. Now, that in itself may open up a path to give them clarity about what they want to achieve from a purpose perspective. So I think
yes.
they all go together and do change over time depending on what we're experiencing. I mean, someone who gets uh, a diagnosis with regard to their health could completely flip their purpose on its head. We've seen it happen time and time again. Someone who suddenly lands in a job that makes them a lot wealthier than they ever expected to be they suddenly might see things differently and aim
They
higher.
might. And that's an interesting question, right? So if you were to win lotto tomorrow and you never had to work again, like I know from my perspective, I think that that would actually probably align me more with my North Node and maybe give
Mm.
me that extra bit of confidence to move towards it. Because you hear about people winning lotto or things happen and their life changes. And then, yes, their values change, but and this is my perspective, right? I feel like we still have this strong need for purpose. And if we're drifting away from our purpose because our life circumstances change and suddenly there's another value that's taken over, that's where we can feel empty, like
Oh, so much
really
so.
empty. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I know I've had times where I've stepped away from my purpose and there's this really deep sense of emptiness and not knowing how to step into what can I do to fuel that need for purpose? How can I
Mm,
feel
mm,
like I'm living a purposeful life where that whatever and everyone's purpose is different, but that
yeah.
need is getting
Yeah.
met. And for me, it feels really strong. So my North Node is in Capricorn and expressed through the 10th
Ah,
house, double Capricorn. So for me, this is about really working on my career. And again, this is where it can
mm.
be if I was giving somebody a reading and it's in Capricorn in the 10th, your North Node is not pointing towards this is the kind of work that you should be doing, but
Yeah.
everything else Everything else in your chart is going to show what your interests are. Like being a Scorpio, naturally I'm drawn to, things like this, right? But North Node in Capricorn in the 10th, it's about really pursuing your career, your work, doing what is really important for you. But also
Mm.
Capricorn energy, it's a steady growth and it's
Yep.
steady progression. It's making sure that you're putting all the right things in place, setting up the foundations, putting the structure in place so that there's some longevity there.
Mm.
Because Capricorn being represented by the mountain goat, it's those steps they take are very strategic, very
Yep.
strategic. You're not going to take that next step on the mountain unless they know where that step is going to land. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes knowing that North Node Capricorn in the 10th, South Node is in Cancer in the 4th, it means that I need that strong foundation of family and security to be able to do that. And so I think that
Mm.
security is an important piece because if we're going to take that step on that rocky mountain, not only do we know where it's going to land, we've got to have security underpinning it. And I
And
think
it's yeah, yeah.
sometimes knowing that South Node, that can stop people from pursuing their purpose because it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah, very much so. And I think if we've done a podcast previously on intuition, right? We talked about
Yes,
impulse and intuition. And
yes,
I think, you know, this is just so in tune with everything you and I stand for. Because
mm,
if someone gets quiet enough on a regular enough basis to listen and
mm.
trusts what they're hearing, what they're being guided towards, it will be in line with their true values and their true north and their purpose. Because, you know,
Is it that easy though? Is it that easy? Have you struggled
is it
looking
easy?
back over time? Have you struggled to really step into your purpose or maybe be not sure of where am I going?
The only thing that's ever got in my way is self-doubt. And if I do the work
Mm.
on that,
Yep,
then things open up. Yeah,
yep,
definitely. Imposter syndrome, self-doubt,
mm,
all of those things. If
yes,
I get them out of the way, I'm fine.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's
when
where
have
my
you
real work's
experienced?
been.
Yeah, so when have you experienced that self-doubt and imposter syndrome? How did that show up?
Getting on stage.
I get that. Yes.
Writing a book. Who wants to read
Yep.
this book?
Yeah.
Look at me. I have these big, massive goals. I didn't do things little,
Mm.
but I am Capricorn, so that
Yeah.
ongoing growth, those big, enormous
Yeah.
goals. Uh, but also, this deep wish to help other people see
Mm.
their own potential and see
Yeah.
what they're capable of. And that's
Mm.
what took me out of my comfort zone to do this stuff anyway. But I still
Mm.
don't choose to get on stage as such. I'm quite okay in front of a small training room, but
Mm.
on stage doing a keynote talk, oh my gosh, I still have to talk to myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. But I am quite comfortable on
Yeah,
stage.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Um, but we all have, different things that stretch us and push us, right? And we've all experienced that sense of self-doubt, imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is horrendous when you're experiencing that. And I think sometimes the bigger the stretch towards our purpose, the bigger in our mind, the steps we have to take, I think that's what holds us back from taking those steps sometimes. And you're right, having that awareness of when you're experiencing imposter syndrome and taking small steps towards what we want to achieve can definitely help us get there. What I'd love
Oh,
to know
yes.
is when you've experienced that self-doubt and imposter syndrome, yes, you have to have the awareness, but how do you get past it?
Well, again, really interesting because I say up front at the front of this podcast about purpose and my thoughts on that, but it is, well, why am I doing this?
Mm,
It's not just about me, it's about the people listening. A big part, and I think getting older helps with this, is what other people think of me is none of my business. And that's a
mm,
really big part of it. It's like, as long as my intent is true, and clear and kind,
Mm.
then, I'm not setting out to upset anyone by what I'm saying or doing. And I have done over time because, you're never going to have 100% of an audience backing
No.
you. But yeah, look, I think I'm a writer, so I do a lot of writing about things, pros and cons and whys and wherefores. But it's just having a chat. It's having a chat to myself, Tanya. And it's like,
Yeah.
I've been high-fiving myself a lot lately because I am a very hardworking Capricorn and I've been relaxing for a whole week in between jobs.
Unheard
And
of, right?
yeah, yeah, but this is what I do now. It's like high five, well done, girl.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you. And I
Yeah.
suppose it's doing those fun, silly little things to encourage yourself
Yeah.
that it's okay. And I would say definitely get a coach or get a mentor. Like I have already lined up a mentor stepping back into a learning and development role. I've already
Mm.
lined someone up to support me, and I will
Nice.
join communities to make sure that I'm, getting the latest and greatest information. And
And
so, yeah,
that's a great point, because not a lot of people do it, is get themselves a coach to
yeah.
push them towards their goals. And I think that's a really important part that people are missing sometimes, because asking your friends and family, yes, they love you and you get great support from them, but that's very different from a coach, and it's very different from someone that has expertise in that area that can assist you. And I think
Very
that's a
much.
good point. Mm.
And the other thing is, true longtime friends can be really valuable. I've got one friend in particular who we will, if we want to give some feedback, we might say, can I be an uncomfortable friend for a moment?
Yes,
And
yes.
then we get permission.
Hmm.
Uh, but again, we're both business people, so we know the value of,
Mm.
and it's only an opinion, like we don't need to get hung up on other opinions. But like you say,
Yeah,
if we get a coach systemizes the coaching process. They have
yeah.
processes to take you through that get you to a certain point. They know
Yeah.
how to draw out of you what goals to set. So I just, I mean, I am a coach, so I've always had a coach. I practice what I preach.
Mm.
You'd be the same.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes people may not get a coach because it's a financial element. But ChatGPT is quite phenomenal. Like, I'd love to share, just so people listening know, Brenda and I have been playing a lot with ChatGPT recently from that coaching perspective. And I took Brenda's advice on this one, and I set up a completely separate ChatGPT. So it had no history of anything else that I'd input, and started and set it up saying, you are now going to be my coach. But before we get into the coaching, I'm going to use this as a bit of a journal. I'm going to share my goals with you. I'm going to share my struggles with you. I'm going to share what's going on so that when I'm ready for coaching, you've got all the context. And then we were very specific about, the questions, the advice, and, that playing devil's advocate, which is what you mentioned before, is super important with coaching, because particularly with ChatGPT, unless you tell it to play devil's advocate, it can sort of go down a pathway that may not be the right pathway for you. But it is phenomenal in terms of the advice that it gives you, what you need to do. So that's another way to help ourselves, particularly when those goals feel really big and scary. Now, what I want to share with you, and I'd love to see what cards you pulled, because this was
Oh,
really
yes.
interesting. When I pulled cards to, you know, give me some insights into, I guess, the emotions that will come through when we talk about purpose, because it's a big thing to talk about. The first card that came up was suffering. I'm like,
Oh,
this is a bit heavy, but
interesting.
I think it's really interesting, because when we're maybe stuck in our south node and we don't feel like we can push towards our purpose and what we're meant to do, and we don't have that strong sense of purpose, we are suffering, because
Hmm.
we're in so many ways we're holding ourselves back. It could be imposter syndrome, it could be issues of self-worth, it could be issues of not knowing the steps and how to take forward. So, you know, we sit and we suffer when we're not clear on our purpose. But then the other card that I pulled, which I really love, is this one. And this is one of my favorite cards.
I can't read
That
it. What does it say?
it's joy, it's risk, but it's joy guides.
Joy. Joy guides. Love
Yeah.
the joy guides.
And I think that is so relevant because when we're clear on our purpose, that purpose brings us joy. Like we
Mm,
love what we're doing, but there's a risk element to it because it's the self-worth, it's the imposter syndrome, it's the can I actually do it apart from imposter syndrome? Can I actually pull this off and make it happen? But unless we take those risks and allow ourselves to really, really enjoy it, no one's going to see the work that we're capable of doing.
and if it's personal, no one's going to know if you've reached it or not anyway, only you. But it's
Yep.
interesting because I've chosen the same cards, which is Sonia Choquette. And
No
the really
surprises there.
interesting, yeah, I
Yep.
drew a card before we started and
Mm.
I didn't know what our topic was. And my one is grace. Oh, you probably can't see it because it's a bit bright. So
Oh, that's one of
grace.
my favorite cards. That's
Oh, I
beautiful.
love grace. It's written on my arm. Love grace. And interesting then, I know it's in here because I've had this card many times before. The Holy Spirit is filling your life with grace and ease. You're aligning with your purpose
Mm-hmm.
and your discipline and focus are paying off. That's the
Yeah,
start of that. It's like, oh, there we go. How's that for
that
in
is
tune?
so perfect. It's so perfect, but it's also a really great reminder that our purpose is a co-creation. Like we
Yes.
have our North Node, we have really strong elements in our astrology chart. Our team on the outside know what we love and what we love doing and what brings us joy, and they're there to support us.
Mm. And
Mm.
well, this is my view anyway, if you're feeling discomfort or you're feeling unhappy or you're feeling bleh,
Yeah.
not always, but chances are something's out of alignment. And you mentioned
Yes.
neuroplasticity, which is one of my
Mm.
favorite ever topics because it saved my life, actually, being
Mm.
able to rewire my brain.
Yep.
And, you know, I remember, and it's a poignant time because it was about just over 3 years ago. I was listening to something online and it said, do this exercise, write down what makes you happy. And I
Mm.
remember trying to think of what makes me happy, and everything I wrote down was outside of myself. And I
Mm.
knew that
Mm.
that's not, that stuff can be taken away. And
Yes.
so I sat with that for weeks, not just 5 minutes like they suggested. And it's
Mm.
really stuck with me. And maybe that's something that those listening could ask themselves,
Yeah.
what makes me happy? And see if you can answer
Mm.
it or not. And that's when you can call a friend or
Yeah.
ask a family member,
Yeah.
when do you see me light up?
Mm.
What am I talking about? What am I doing? And
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, this is not a dress rehearsal, we get one shot at this thing called life, and we might as well go, yeehaw, let's do this.
Exactly. Exactly. And when people get stuck sometimes, and I draw them back to their astrology chart, it's their sun sign, their rising sign, and their moon. Tells you really clearly what your interests are, what your values are, emotionally, what you need, but also what your soul needs as well.
Yeah,
So as a
yeah,
as a Scorpio, astrology, it lights up my world.
mm,
Doing readings for people where maybe one of their loved ones that's passed over has come through brings me so much joy. Like
mm,
I can't even describe it sometimes, but that it's so much joy to be able
yeah,
to facilitate that interaction. And that's a Scorpio thing. It's a real Scorpio thing.
yeah,
My Pisces rising, very similar, that it needs those things that maybe other people find a little bit, scary or daunting. But
yeah,
I also have a creative need. That Pisces need is creative. And then my Virgo moon, I care about people. Like I really,
yeah,
really care about people. And that sense of giving back is really important to me. So it doesn't matter what work I do, I feel like I have to give back. So there has to be that element of giving back. And so knowing all of those things, that's where I get my joy from. And then like if
yeah,
you think about Pisces rising, that needs fun. It's that element of fun. So going to a gig, going to see a band play, having, lots and lots of fun is important.
Mm,
And
mm,
so when we're stuck, it's an easy way to tap into what does bring me joy. And like you said, how can I rewire my brain?
absolutely, because it's like a belief is a thought we think over and over and over and over again. And so, what do you want to believe in or see or notice? It's like just put whatever that thought is written
Yeah.
somewhere that you're going to see it time and time and time again, and
Yeah.
just make a choice. Everything's a choice.
You mentioned recently that you'd created a vision board and you'd done it
I did.
differently than how you'd done it in the past. How
Yeah.
can that help with something like this?
Yeah, look, I giggle. I wake up in the morning, I put it on the wall beside my bed and I giggle when I look at it because I think I've rather than the big flash house and the this and the that, every word is in a heart. So in a heart, I've got a picture of me speaking with
Mm,
career success
yep.
written on there. I've got a picture of money in a heart with financial abundance written on it. I've got red hearts in a heart with family. And beside that is a beautiful recent picture of my daughter and her husband and grandchildren. I've got Formula One tickets, business class travel, an Air New
Yep.
Zealand plane and all this stuff. And I giggle because it's like I'm going to Formula One in October. So I've kind of cheated there. I'm already doing that one. However, it's the stuff that makes me smile when I wake
Yes.
up in the morning. And I think that's what I've done differently. I haven't made it so out of reach. I've made
Mm,
it like, actually, what a privileged life I
yep.
have. Let's continue along this path now because there's been enough challenges up until this point to last
Mhm.
me a lifetime. Now it's time for the good stuff. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. One last question before we finish up. You just mentioned about challenges.
Mhm.
When we think about challenges from that perspective of purpose, have those challenges come up and tested your purpose?
Oh my goodness. Uh, yeah, look, I know the answer will be yes.
Mm,
I'm not sure that I can think of an example right now. Possibly one is when I chose to let my business go and work for someone else. But it's
mm,
really interesting that through a few not so great decisions in my career, I'm about to land somewhere that puts me back doing what I did in my business, but for an organization with a bigger budget, which is
yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can have a bit more fun with
Yeah.
the the learning that I do. I think it's almost like I became so used to challenges, that falling back to spending time with family is probably the thing that was my saving grace
Mm, yeah. Nice. Nice.
during those challenging times. And
Mm,
I can think of specific moments sitting on the couch with my granddaughter where I didn't even really know if I wanted to be here and do another day. And I just
yep.
allowed her smile to reach my heart. I just sat.
Yep.
So everything turns up at the perfect time when I just don't think I can do it anymore. It really, really
Yeah.
does.
And that's really interesting. And the reason I ask that question is I feel that quite often when I've experienced big challenges, it's potentially because I'm out of alignment with my purpose. I've gone down a different path that's taken me away. These challenges come up, and as uncomfortable and horrible as these challenges can be sometimes, it's like it's trying to get me back on the right path again.
Yeah.
And so it's making me look at challenges a little bit differently as this is a bit of a nudge here. This
Mm.
is telling me something here. Where am I out of alignment with my purpose? Where have I gone down a path? And quite often it's because I'm putting other people's needs before my own and
Yeah.
I'm
And like you
stepping away
said,
from
though,
mine.
we can feel it.
Yes.
We can feel it. We can sense it. But sometimes you've got to allow yourself to stop and pause and take a breath and just have that quiet time, sit with that uncomfortableness for the answer to come through. That's why I left my last job. I wasn't, the leader that I was reporting to, I just didn't align with. And
Mm.
rather than do what I've always done and stick it out for years, I actually called it quits after a few months. And I was just so proud for looking after myself. But
Mhm.
again, I could feel in my energy that I was not who I normally
Yep.
am. So it's having the courage to pause and sit with a bit of uncomfortableness if that's what's happening.
Yeah,
Then
and
you will get the
recognizing,
inspiration.
yes, and recognizing that signal, that
Mm,
signal means something. And what you did
mm,
is then took that time to sit with it.
mm.
I love it.
Absolutely. It is a
I
big
love it.
topic, isn't it? It is
It
a
is a
big
huge
topic.
topic, a huge
Yeah.
topic. I think we'll end it on that note
Yes.
with that great insight that when something doesn't quite feel right or things are feeling challenging, it's to ask that question. Is this because I'm maybe not so aligned with my purpose and I need to get back on track? Or is the challenge to help me grow because there's an obstacle I need to get past in order to pursue that purpose? And I think
Yeah.
it's diagnosing or triaging, it's a great word. Let's
Yeah.
triage. What is this challenge? If we look at David Rock's scarf model,
Yep.
it's pushing me away or pushing me towards my purpose. And for those listening, David Rock's scarf model, David Rock is a phenomenal thought leader in the space of neuroscience. And so it's measuring our fears, our certainty, our emotion, what comes up
Mm,
when we're triggered. And I think the most basic way to describe it is it pulling me in towards my purpose or is it pushing me away? And then
mm.
diagnosing what's going on. Great discussion,
Absolutely.
Brenda.
Awesome discussion.
Thank you. And
Yes.
some great reminders to self, as always.
Oh, exactly. Seriously, it's not therapy, but it kind of is.
It kind of is sort of what I needed today. Sort of, kind of, yeah,
Me
always.
too.
Thank you, Brenda.
Oh, thank you, my friend, and look forward to doing this again in
We'll
a couple
talk
of weeks.
soon.
All right.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.